Yo, what's going on, guys? And Fenerbahce just got themselves Arturs Zagars. All right, the man who played great. Actually, a general manager from the G League who was talking about Arturs Zagars sent me this tweet from Aris Barkas, who put out Arturs Zagars is near a deal with Fenerbahce. The player who stole the show in the FIBA World Cup is expected to sign with the Turkish powerhouse and then be on loan to play in Lithuania with Wolves BC, or at least start the season there. And then he's with Eurohoops Net. So shout out him for the information right there. And it's a cool one. It's a cool one to see if you guys are a Zagars fan. And I definitely think it's interesting because if you guys don't pay attention to EuroLeague basketball, if you look at Fenerbahce's basketball team, it's currently guard-wise. I know they have Yamadar, right? Raul Neto. I think they just brought in, is Nemanja Bjelica still there? I knew they brought him in recently. But their current roster is, I'm trying to see what their players are currently. Jonathan Motley's there. Shout out. Scotty Wilpkin is there. Nemanja Bjelica is there. Nigel Hayes is there. Daishan Pierre is there, who's actually a good basketball. Yeah, Nick Kalathis, Tyler Dorsey, Yamadar, Marco Guduric, Nate Sestina, Georgios Papagiannis are all there. They already have their starting three in terms of guards, which is Scotty Wilpkin, Yamadar, and Nick Kalathis. But it's cool to see that they're going to, and they brought in Yamadar this offseason, all right? And they moved on from, Carson Edwards. So definitely Arturs is looking like he's going to be a down the road type guy.
So I texted my guy and this is what I said. Hey, thoughts on Arturs Zagars? Eurobasket article came out saying NBA teams are interested. What do you think? He tells me that he thinks it's true, but he doesn't feel like Zagars is doing anything new, and that NBA teams only watch international basketball 3 times a year, and the World Cup is one of them. So I responded, thanks, man. Explained the situation that I had pitched him to a G League team as a kind of a two-way guy, G League draft guy. And the GM told me that he likes him, but he wouldn't be one of his first choices. And I offered to go get his, intel, and his agent said they have no interest in the G League. And my guy that I'm talking with from the Boston Celtics says, oh yeah, I think he'd be one of the better players in the G League if he was there. But I think if he comes as an NBA guy, Zagars is going to get Chima Moneki'd and just wind up back in Europe after making less money for a year. And that's basically Chima Muneki had a good run with the Nigerian national team, which is coached by Mike Brown. And then when Mike Brown got hired by the Sacramento Kings, he brought him over on a decent deal for a guy who had never played in the NBA, then cut him at the end of training camp this past year. And he ended up making less money because he signed late with European teams and they had already spent their money. So I said, yeah, I agree with that. I want to see Zagars first on a two-way. Let's see how he does in the G League, and then if he's good, let's convert him. And my problem is with Zagars, if I don't see him right now, from what I've seen, I feel like he would be like Sergio Rodriguez from a decade ago in the NBA, which is a decent 15-minute backup point guard, but Zagars would make more money playing and staying in Europe, and he'd make more, freaking playing time and money. And I also said I loved that my friend used the Chima Moneki reference. And I also said I feel like Zagars, if we don't see him in the G first, that he'd be like Kevin Pangos and just get cut halfway through the season because we can't play him. So I'm waiting for him to respond if this report was more for the validity of what's the validity in this report? Is it actually you think more to drum up interest from European teams, or you think there's actually NBA interest? But that's basically my thoughts right there. I do want to hear your guys' thoughts on Arturs Zagars, because I do think it's interesting because, again, what we said originally, this is a guy who averaged 12.5 points, 7.5 assists. He had some steals. When you have teammates hyping you up and stuff, it's definitely going to push the notion forward. But I do want to address that when you have a guy like, how do I put this lightly? It's nothing against Zagars or anything, but this is the big problem that I talk about with clubs, is that when you have these guys who are in Europe and they're good enough to come to the NBA, but they're not good enough to be like starters immediately, like Vasilija Micic, and they end up being these guys who potentially, are like 10th or 13th. And I met Turkish Shingelia at Summer League, and I was talking with him, and he said, like, when he played with the Brooklyn Nets, first they were playing him at small forward, when he's like, today, like, I'm better because like I'm a perfect power forward. And he also said that the problem is that they like wouldn't give him, he was like, yeah, he understood that he was part of the rotation, but he hated the fact that he would get sent to the G League, average a bunch of triple doubles, and then he get brought back up just to ride the bench. And I understand that that's just frustrating as all hell. Okay. And that's kind of the problem with NBA, with EuroLeague players coming over, is they come over and if they're not immediately like playing, a bunch of minutes like they expected, they get upset because of the fact that, they're not getting the minutes that they were hoping for, that they have to now like earn their minutes even though they played great in Europe. So it frustrates a lot of these European players, because they're like, why would I ever come over when I can just be, the best player one of the best players in Europe, and not even have to worry about the fact that I'm making just as much money, if not more, living the life, because they pay for your taxes and stuff like that. And they usually give you an apartment. So you're living good, okay? And it's not a bad livelihood. So it's really hard to just be like, oh yeah, like, don't do that, because you could be in the NBA. Because a lot of these guys are like, okay, it's just the NBA. Like, I can just stay here and play for like the Adriatic League and make more money. And that's more exciting for a lot of these guys than, having to just be the third option on an NBA team, making the same amount of money, playing significantly less, and not playing in your backyard. That's the other thing. The big thing is being able to play in your backyard. Everyone says that, like, why wouldn't you want to just play in your backyard? And you have to understand that that's the big appeal for a lot of these guys. So I get it. And there's this like whole frustration where like a lot of people are like, but if they want to be in the NBA, they might as well, like, try. But a lot of these guys, making it to the NBA isn't the end all be all, like that isn't what dictates success in their mind. And that's the cool part about all of this is, they don't need that, I guess you would say, vindication of being in the NBA to know they have made it.